Slide 1. Introduction SDG 4, Quality Education, Global Progress and Challenges. Continuing the series from previous week, I Harshit Simha, your host, will now discuss on Sustainable Development Goal 4, SDG 4, represents a universal pledge to ensure inclusive, equitable, and quality education for all by 2030. Acknowledged as a fundamental human right, education is a cornerstone for sustainable development, driving economic growth, fostering innovation, and reducing poverty and inequality globally. Significant progress has been made towards this goal. Global enrollment rates in primary education have reached historic highs, and gender parity has improved substantially in many regions. Technological integration and digital learning platforms have expanded access, particularly in secondary and tertiary education. Numerous countries have strengthened their policy frameworks, increasing national education budgets and implementing curricular reforms focused on skills development for the 21st century. Initiatives such as digital classrooms and community learning programs have shown promise in bridging accessibility gaps. However, the world remains severely off track to achieve SDG 4 by the 2030 deadline. Persistent challenges include profound regional disparities, with sub-Saharan Africa and conflict-affected areas experiencing the highest rates of out-of-school children. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated a pre-existing learning crisis, leading to massive learning losses and increased dropout rates, from which many education systems are still recovering. Even for those in school, the quality of education is a critical concern. Millions lack foundational literacy and numeracy skills. Other entrenched barriers include a global shortage of qualified teachers, inadequate infrastructure, and chronic underfunding of education systems, particularly in low-income countries. Addressing these challenges requires urgent, scaled-up investment and innovative solutions. Prioritizing teacher training, leveraging technology for personalized learning, and implementing targeted programs to reach the most marginalized communities are essential. As of late 2024, achieving SDG 4 demands renewed political will, international cooperation, and a steadfast commitment to making quality education a reality for every learner, regardless of their circumstances. Accelerating progress on SDG 4 is essential for reducing global inequalities and achieving the broader 2030 agenda. Slide 2. Understanding SDG 4, Core Targets. Sustainable Development Goal 4, SDG 4, articulates a comprehensive and multidimensional framework for educational development, moving beyond mere access to schooling to encapsulate a vision of inclusive, equitable, and quality lifelong learning. Its core targets, as delineated, form an interconnected architecture designed to address educational needs across the entire human life course. The foundation is laid through the emphasis on quality early childhood development, recognizing that cognitive and socio-emotional development in the formative years is critical for future learning trajectories and societal productivity. This is seamlessly coupled with the target of equal access to free primary and secondary education, a non-negotiable prerequisite for fulfilling the fundamental human right to education and breaking cycles of intergenerational poverty. The framework then logically progresses to the cultivation of relevant skills, specifically technical and vocational proficiencies. This target directly addresses the nexus between education and the labor market, aiming to equip youth and adults with the competencies necessary for decent work, entrepreneurship, and adaptive resilience in a rapidly evolving global economy. Finally, the target of lifelong learning, encompassing equal access to technical, vocational and higher education, completes this holistic model. It acknowledges that learning cannot be confined to childhood and adolescence but must be a continuous process enabling personal development, active citizenship, and upskilling throughout one's life. In synthesis, the targets of SDG 4 represent a sophisticated policy recognition that educational equity and quality are not singular events but a sustained continuum. Achieving these targets by 2030 remains a formidable global challenge, requiring integrated policy interventions that simultaneously strengthen all levels of the educational ecosystem. Slide 3. The Global Education Landscape. The global education landscape, as quantified by key metrics, presents a sobering tableau of persistent systemic failures juxtaposed against decades of incremental progress. The extant data reveals a crisis of access, quality, and capacity that severely imperils the achievement of SDG 4. A cohort of 258 million children and youth remains entirely excluded from formal education, a figure emblematic of deep-seated geographic and socioeconomic disparities, with the burden concentrated overwhelmingly in sub-Saharan Africa and conflict zones. More alarming, however, is the crisis of learning poverty. The staggering statistic of 617 million adolescents lacking minimum proficiency in reading and mathematics underscores that mere school attendance is an insufficient metric for success. The quality of pedagogy and the resultant learning outcomes are the paramount concerns. This foundational skills deficit perpetuates into adulthood, creating a cyclical burden of disadvantage, as illustrated by the 750 million adults grappling with illiteracy, which cripples economic productivity and social mobility. The structural underpinning of this dual crisis is a profound human resource shortage. The global deficit of 69 million qualified teachers is not merely a numerical gap but a critical failure in the educational ecosystem, directly correlated with overcrowded classrooms and inadequate instructional quality. The COVID-19 pandemic served as an acute stressor, exacerbating these pre-existing inequities and causing severe learning regressions. Current projections indicate that without radical intervention, the legacy of these disruptions will depress economic growth and deepen social fissures for a generation. The landscape thus demands not incremental change, but a transformative global commitment to financing, teacher development, and innovative educational delivery. Slide 4. Quality education in Nordic countries, lessons for India. The Nordic education model, epitomized by Finland, presents a paradigmatic alternative to performance-oriented systems, deriving its success from a foundational commitment to equity and social trust. Its core principles offer critical lessons for nations like India grappling with educational quality and access. The model's efficacy is predicated on several interlocking components. First, its equity-focused structure is paramount. By design, it minimizes socioeconomic segregation through a comprehensive school system and allocates robust resources to support disadvantaged students, ensuring that a child's postal code does not determine their educational destiny. Second, the elevated teacher prestige is a cornerstone. Teaching is a highly selective, master's-level profession endowed with significant autonomy and competitive remuneration. This transforms educators into pedagogical experts rather than mere curriculum implementers. Furthermore, the child-centered philosophy prioritizes holistic development. With play-based early education, a delayed academic start, and other emphasis on standardized testing, the system fosters intrinsic motivation and critical thinking over rote memorization. This is enabled by a trust-based governance model, where school-level autonomy is the norm and quality is assured through professional collaboration rather than punitive accountability and excessive standardization. For India, the salient lesson is that educational transformation cannot be achieved through market competition or high-stakes testing alone. The Nordic experience demonstrates that excellence emerges from systemic equity, profound investment in teacher professionalism, and a cultural shift towards trust and child-centricity. Replicating this requires a long-term, policy-led commitment to eradicating structural inequalities and redefining the very purpose of education. Slide 5. Education in East Asia, Achievement through Rigor. The East Asian educational model, exemplified by systems in Singapore, South Korea, and Shanghai, China, represents a formidable paradigm where exceptional academic achievement is cultivated through a culture of intense rigor and discipline. This model, consistently producing top-tier results in international assessments like PISA, is underpinned by a societal consensus that views education as the paramount vehicle for individual mobility and national economic advancement. The architecture of this success is built upon several pillars. Rigorous expectations form the core, characterized by high academic standards, substantial homework loads, and extended instructional time. This creates an ecosystem where effort is valorized and persistence is systematically cultivated. This effort-based ethos is complemented by profound teacher respect, where educators are accorded significant cultural reverence and pedagogical authority, facilitating highly disciplined and focused classroom environments. Furthermore, a high-stakes examination focus serves as a powerful extrinsic motivator. Standardized assessments, with significant consequences for future educational and career trajectories, engender a culture of intense academic competition and meticulous preparation. However, this triumvirate of rigor, respect, and examination, while efficacious for cognitive mastery, has drawn considerable critique for its perceived trade-offs. Concerns regarding student psychological well-being, excessive pressure, and the potential suppression of creativity and critical thinking are well documented. In response, these systems are now engaged in a complex process of evolving reform. Initiatives are increasingly aimed at mitigating student stress, reducing curricular overload, and explicitly integrating competencies like creativity, innovation, and socio-emotional learning, all while attempting to preserve the high standards that define their academic success. This ongoing evolution offers a critical lesson. Achieving a balance between the discipline required for foundational mastery and the flexibility needed for 21st century skills is the central challenge for modern education systems. The East Asian experience demonstrates that excellence is achievable through collective commitment but also underscores the necessity of continual adaptation to foster holistic human development. Slide 6. Vocational education and current status of quality education in India. India's educational landscape presents a complex dichotomy of significant achievements in access juxtaposed with profound challenges in quality and relevance. While the country has made remarkable strides in achieving near universal primary enrollment, 96.9%, and improved gender parity at the primary level, these quantitative gains mask persistent qualitative deficits. High secondary level dropout rates, 17.5%, and suboptimal learning outcomes, exacerbated by infrastructure deficiencies and variable teacher quality, indicate a system struggling to deliver foundational competencies. This crisis of quality underscores the urgent need to reimagine education's purpose, moving beyond mere certification to fostering genuine capability. In this context, the strategic expansion of vocational education and training, VET, emerges as a critical imperative for bridging the pervasive skills gap and aligning education with economic needs. The envisioned VET model, as outlined, is predicated on 4 robust pillars. Industry alignment through sector skills councils ensures curriculum relevance by directly embedding employer-defined competency standards. Practical training, via dual-system apprenticeships and modern facilities, provides authentic work-based learning experiences, mitigating the theory-practice divide. The establishment of a recognized certification framework, such as the National Skills Qualification Framework, NSQF, aims to grant vocational qualifications portable credibility and labor market currency. Finally, creating clear career pathways with credit transfer mechanisms seeks to dismantle the academic vocational hierarchy, promoting lifelong learning and vertical mobility. India's educational landscape exhibits a stark dichotomy between commendable progress in access and persistent deficits in quality and equity. Achievements such as near universal primary enrollment, 96.9%, improved gender parity at the primary level, and the expansive reach of the midday meal scheme highlight significant strides in inclusion and participation. However, these gains are substantially undermined by critical challenges. Alarmingly high secondary dropout rates, 17.5%, subpar learning outcomes, deficient infrastructure in rural schools, and issues of teacher absenteeism and inadequate training reflect a system struggling to translate schooling into effective learning. The disparity between quantitative expansion and qualitative depth underscores an urgent need for policy shifts that prioritize pedagogical quality, infrastructure investment, and teacher professionalism to realize the promise of equitable quality education. Slide 7. National Education Policy 2025, India's Transformation Plan. The National Education Policy, NEP, 2025 stands as India's most comprehensive educational reform initiative, conceived to radically restructure the system to meet 21st century demands. Its overarching vision is to transition from a rigid, rote learning model to a flexible, holistic, and multidisciplinary framework that fosters critical thinking, creativity, and ethical reasoning. Central to this transformation is the introduction of the 5+3+3+4 curricular and pedagogical structure, which replaces the outdated 10+2 model. This redesign integrates early childhood education, ages 3 to 8, into the formal schooling system, recognizing the critical importance of foundational learning. The policy also champions multilingualism and mother tongue instruction in early grades to improve comprehension and reduce dropout rates. A significant thrust is placed on vocational integration, with hands-on skill development and internships mandated from grade 6 onward, aiming to bridge the gap between education and employability. Concurrently, the NEP advocates for a digital revolution in education through the National Digital Education Architecture, NDEAR, intended to support personalized and accessible learning across diverse contexts. By proposing an increase in public education spending to 6% of GDP, the policy underscores the necessity of substantial financial investment to realize these ambitious goals. While the NEP 2020 presents a visionary blueprint for creating an equitable and vibrant knowledge society, its success hinges on effective implementation, sustained political will, and robust stakeholder engagement across all tiers of governance. Slide 8. Regional disparities in Indian education. The Indian education system is characterized by profound regional inequalities, creating a fragmented landscape where a child's geographic location remains a strong predictor of educational access and quality. Southern states, such as Kerala and Tamil Nadu, with their historical commitment to social development and higher public investment, demonstrate markedly superior outcomes in enrollment, infrastructure, and learning proficiency. In stark contrast, states in the northern and eastern regions, including Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, grapple with severe challenges including inadequate infrastructure, acute teacher shortages, and deeply entrenched socio-cultural barriers that hinder participation, particularly for girls. These disparities are exacerbated by an urban-rural divide. Rural areas, even in more developed states, face significant obstacles such as multi-grade teaching, insufficient digital connectivity, and high dropout rates in secondary education. Governance efficiency, historical patterns of investment, and varying implementation capacity of federal policies further amplify these geographical inequities. Addressing this patchwork of educational attainment requires not only enhanced financial allocation but also targeted, context-specific interventions that consider local governance structures, linguistic diversity, and socioeconomic conditions. Policy must prioritize equitable resource distribution, capacity building in lagging states, and innovative models for delivering quality education in underserved regions to ensure that geographical destiny does not determine educational outcomes. Slide 9. Case Study: Kerala's Education Success. Kerala's educational achievements present a compelling case study in successful human development within a middle-income context. The state's near universal literacy and high learning outcomes are not a recent phenomenon but the result of historical investment dating to the 19th century reforms of Travancore and Kochi princely states, which established a strong foundation of public schooling. This legacy was sustained post-independence through consistent political commitment, with the state allocating over 6% of its GDP to education for decades, well above the national average. A critical driver of this success has been women's empowerment. Kerala's focused investment in female education, resulting in a female literacy rate of 97.5%, created a powerful intergenerational virtuous cycle. Educated women, as primary caregivers, became strong advocates for their children's education, improving enrollment, retention, and learning outcomes. This social capital was further amplified by deep community involvement. Through robust decentralized governance under the People's Plan campaign, active parent-teacher associations, PTAs, and school management committees, the community functions as a stakeholder rather than a passive beneficiary, ensuring institutional accountability and contextual relevance. Kerala's model demonstrates that educational transformation is achievable without rapid economic growth when underpinned by sustained political will, strategic prioritization of gender equity, and participatory governance. It offers a powerful counter-narrative to the assumption that economic prosperity must precede educational development, providing critical lessons for other Indian states and developing regions globally. Slide 10. Gender and Education: Progress and Persistent Gaps. India has achieved a notable milestone in attaining gender parity at the primary education level, with a Gender Parity Index, GPI, of 1.0 reflecting equal enrollment of girls and boys. This success is attributed to targeted initiatives such as the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign, provision of free bicycles, and improved sanitation facilities in schools, which collectively reduced structural barriers to girls' education. Enrollment gains have also permeated higher education, where the GPI stands at 0.97, indicating near parity. However, these aggregate figures mask persistent and deeply entrenched disparities. At the secondary level, girls' dropout rates remain elevated, 19.8% compared to 17.2% for boys, underscoring how socio-cultural norms, such as early marriage, domestic responsibilities, and safety concerns, continue to curtail female educational progression. Furthermore, significant subject stratification persists in higher education, with women remaining underrepresented in STEM fields, thereby constraining their future economic opportunities. Most strikingly, educational advances have not translated into proportional gains in workforce participation. Female labor force participation remains alarmingly low at 20.3%, suggesting a disconnect between educational attainment and economic empowerment. This paradox highlights how patriarchal structures, occupational segregation, and a lack of supportive infrastructure limit the conversion of educational capital into labor market success. While legislative and policy measures have driven commendable progress in access, addressing the qualitative and structural dimensions of gender inequality remains imperative. Future efforts must focus on enhancing school-to-work transition mechanisms for women, combating regressive social norms, and ensuring that education serves as a genuine catalyst for gender equality rather than merely a metric of enrollment. Slide 11. Teacher quality, the critical factor. Extensive global research substantiates that teacher quality constitutes the most pivotal school-level determinant of student learning outcomes, surpassing infrastructure, resources, and even curricular content in impact. Within the Indian context, this critical element faces severe systemic challenges, including a debilitating shortage of approximately 1 million teachers, persistently high absenteeism, averaging 19%, and profound deficits in both subject matter mastery and pedagogical competence, particularly in facilitating higher-order cognitive skills. The National Education Policy (NEP) 2020 confronts this crisis through a multi-pronged reform agenda designed to professionalize teaching. Central to this effort is the elevation of qualification standards, notably through a rigorous 4-year integrated B.Ed degree and mandatory teacher eligibility tests, aimed at ensuring a foundation of expertise. The policy further institutionalizes continuous professional development, mandating regular, needs-based in-service training to transition from episodic workshops to sustained skill enhancement. To instill accountability, it proposes systematic performance assessment frameworks utilizing objective metrics and constructive feedback mechanisms. Concurrently, it seeks to enhance professional prestige through recognition and rewards, including merit-based advancement and financial incentives, to attract and retain high-caliber talent. The success of these reforms is imperative. Without a motivated, well-prepared, and accountable teaching workforce, other educational investments, in digital infrastructure, curriculum revision, or physical facilities, will yield diminishing returns. Ultimately, transforming teaching into a respected, evidence-informed profession is not merely an operational goal but a fundamental prerequisite for realizing the transformative ambitions of Indian education reform and achieving equitable learning for all. Slide 12. Education Promise and Pitfalls with Financial Limitations. Educational technology presents transformative potential to democratize access, personalize instruction, and enhance engagement through adaptive and immersive learning tools. The COVID-19 pandemic catalyzed its rapid adoption, triggering exponential growth in platform usage and investment. Applications range from AI-driven personalized learning systems to VR-enabled experiential environments, offering unprecedented scalability and customization. However, this promise is tempered by significant pitfalls. Research reveals efficacy is highly contingent on implementation quality, pedagogical integration, and teacher readiness, variables often overlooked in technology-first approaches. Equally critical are equity concerns. Digital divides in infrastructure, device access, and connectivity risk exacerbating existing socioeconomic and geographical disparities. Furthermore, issues of data privacy, algorithmic bias, and the developmental impact of excessive screen time necessitate robust regulatory and ethical frameworks. For EdTech to fulfill its potential, it must be embedded within a holistic strategy that prioritizes teacher capacity building, contextual relevance, and inclusive design. Technology should augment, not replace, the human elements of teaching, ensuring it serves as a bridge rather than a barrier to equitable quality education. Global education financing reveals profound inequities that perpetuate divergent educational outcomes between high and low-income nations. High-income countries invest an average of 5 to 6% of GDP, translating to over $10,000 per student annually, enabling universal access, advanced infrastructure, and robust teacher support systems. In stark contrast, low-income nations allocate only 3 to 4% of GDP, often amounting to less than $500 per student, resulting in chronic shortages of qualified teachers, inadequate learning materials, and substandard infrastructure. These nations frequently rely on external aid to supplement constrained domestic budgets. India occupies a middle ground, investing approximately 3 to 3.5% of GDP, around $1,200 per student, PPP adjusted, though with significant interstate variations. The National Education Policy 2020 ambitiously targets 6% of GDP, yet its implementation remains uncertain. Without increased and efficiently utilized financing, efforts to bridge quality gaps and achieve SDG 4 will remain constrained. Equitable education financing is not merely a fiscal matter but a moral imperative to ensure every learner, regardless of geography, has access to quality education. Slide 13. COVID-19 impact on global education. The COVID-19 pandemic precipitated the most severe disruption to global education in modern history, affecting approximately 1.6 billion learners and exposing profound systemic vulnerabilities. While high-income nations leveraged digital infrastructure to transition to remote learning, educational delivery in many low- and middle-income countries effectively halted, exacerbating pre-existing inequalities. In India, despite initiatives such as PMEVIDYA, significant learning regression occurred, mathematics proficiency declined by an estimated 10 to 15 percentage points, and over 24 million learners risk permanent dropout. While nearly 100 million additional children falling below minimum reading proficiency. The long-term implications extend beyond pedagogical losses. The World Bank estimates a potential $10 trillion reduction in lifetime earnings for affected cohorts due to diminished skills and educational attainment. Recovery necessitates transcending pre-pandemic norms by constructing resilient, equitable systems. This entails integrating blended learning models, addressing foundational learning gaps through accelerated programs, and fortifying digital and physical infrastructure to mitigate future disruptions. Targeted interventions for marginalized communities are imperative to prevent the consolidation of a generational educational divide. The COVID-19 pandemic starkly revealed the digital divide as a critical axis of educational inequality, transforming access to technology into a fundamental determinant of learning opportunity. In India, while affluent urban students transition to online education, millions in rural and economically marginalized communities faced complete educational disconnection due to inadequate internet access, device availability, and digital literacy. National data indicate only 24% of households possess internet connectivity, with a profound rural-urban gap, 15% versus 42%. Even among those with nominal access, multi-device households remain rare, and digital literacy is limited. This technological exclusion threatens to cement and amplify existing socioeconomic disparities, creating a generationally detrimental learning gap. Addressing this requires targeted policy interventions that combine infrastructure investment, affordable technology, teacher training in digital pedagogy, and contextually appropriate content to ensure equitable educational participation in an increasingly digital world. Slide 14. Education for Sustainable Development. Education for Sustainable Development, ESD, represents a paradigm shift from traditional environmental education to a holistic, interdisciplinary approach that prepares learners to address complex sustainability challenges. It integrates four critical dimensions: the knowledge dimension, which fosters understanding of interconnected environmental, social, and economic systems; the values dimension, cultivating respect for nature, social justice, and intergenerational equity; the skills dimension, building capacities in critical thinking, systems analysis, and collaborative problem solving; and the action dimension, empowering students as active change agents through project-based learning and community engagement. ESD moves beyond siloed curricula to embed sustainability as a cross-cutting theme, connecting global issues like climate change and inequality to local contexts and lived experiences. This pedagogical model emphasizes not only cognitive learning but also socio-emotional development and behavioral change, aiming to transform attitudes and inspire responsible action. India has initiated promising ESD efforts, such as the National Green Corps and the Environmental Education, Awareness and Training (EEAT) scheme. The National Education Policy (NEP) 2020 further institutionalizes this commitment by emphasizing the integration of sustainability and environmental awareness across all levels of education. However, effective implementation requires robust teacher training, contextualized learning materials, and meaningful community partnerships to ensure that ESD transcends theoretical awareness and fosters tangible, transformative agency among learners. Slide 15. The Path Forward. Key recommendations. Achieving SDG 4 demands a paradigm shift from incremental improvements to systemic transformation, guided by evidence-based strategies and contextual adaptability. 4 key recommendations emerge as critical for meaningful progress. First, an equity-first approach is non-negotiable. This necessitates targeted investments in underserved regions through weighted per-pupil funding formulas, comprehensive early childhood interventions to preempt achievement gaps, and universal design principles to ensure accessibility for all learners, particularly those with disabilities. Equity must be the central lens through which all policies are designed and evaluated. Second, assessment reform must transition from high-stakes, memorization-focused examinations to balanced systems that prioritize formative feedback, higher-order thinking skills, and real-world application. Assessment data should be utilized for pedagogical improvement and system strengthening rather than punitive measures, supported by appropriate technological tools. Third, teacher empowerment requires a multifaceted strategy, elevating entry standards through selective recruitment and rigorous, research-informed training, fostering continuous professional development via collaborative learning communities and mentorship, and enhancing working conditions with professional autonomy anchored in outcomes-based accountability. Finally, multi-sector collaboration is essential to address education's interconnectedness with health, nutrition, and economic development. Structured partnerships between government, civil society, private sector, and academia, coupled with meaningful community engagement in school governance, can drive sustainable, contextually relevant solutions. The COVID-19 crisis, while disruptive, offers a historic opportunity to reimagine education systems. By embracing these principles, prioritizing equity, reforming assessment, empowering teachers, and fostering collaboration, countries like India can accelerate progress toward inclusive, equitable, and quality education for all. This brings end to our presentation. As we move forward, we shall begin exploring Sustainable Development Goals 5, Gender Equality, Empowering Women and Girls Globally. We encourage you to stay connected with our channel for the upcoming session, and to share this content with fellow professionals who share their passion for sustainable development with our channel. Until then, I wish you all about their professional journey filled with excitement, challenges and sustainable prosperity.